John, this is Chuck Martin and Evan at Tucson Conference One, so.
Oh, thanks, Chuck, for letting me know. I appreciate that. I'll go ahead and, in case you want to present or something, I can go ahead and make it, allow that.
Okay.
I like your little trick here. Look at that camera. These guys are cool at Bedrick, They got all the neat equipment.
Perfect.
How you doing, John?
Oh, real good. How are you?
Good, good.
Peter's gonna join us too, so.
Okay, perfect. Well, yeah, thanks for letting me know, because I always try to, when I see the applicants come in, I like at least to make that so there's no delay getting on. So, thanks.
Great, thank you. I
It's 6 o'clock, so we'll get started. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to tonight's public hearing. My name is John Urino. I'm the zoning examiner for the city of Tucson. We have two cases on the docket for this evening's hearing. The first case is case TP ENT 0523-00023 Campbell and Allen rezoning O3 and R1 to R3.
Good evening, Mr. Zoning Examiner.
Mr. Beal, are you presenting the staff report?
Yes, I am.
Please go ahead, sir.
Thanks. So this is a request by Evan Eglin of Eglin and Bressler Architects on behalf of the property owner at 3801 North Campbell Avenue, LLC, to rezone approximately 3.1 acres from O3 office and R1 residence to R3, which is an urban residence zone. The project is located in the northwest corner of the intersection of North Campbell and East Allen Road. The preliminary development plan, PDP, proposes a multifamily apartment community of 75 new apartment units in two-story buildings. The project site encompasses 3 existing parcels, a single-story clubhouse and pool, along with 11 two-story apartment buildings are also proposed, as for the apartments. Building heights are not to exceed 28 feet. 1 second here. And then the site, the overall density of the proposed development is 24.2 rack and maximum again height of 28 feet. The proposed buildings are generally positioned from north to south in 2 clusters in proximity to the southern and eastern property lines to mitigate any negative impacts to low residential areas to the north and west. Parking areas are located adjacent to these existing residential uses. And then the proposed project also includes greater than required perimeter setback for the proposed R3 zone in the areas adjacent to the residential zones. The setback from the north and west property lines are a minimum of 50 feet. And then the street perimeter setbacks will meet the requirements of the UDC. The proposed rezoning of the site from R1 and O3 to R3 is appropriate for this location, is compatible with surrounding land uses, and it is in compliance with the Campus Farm Area Plan and Plan Tucson, subject to compliance with the attached preliminary conditions. Approval of the requested R3 zoning is recommended. As of today's date, there have been, 1 second here, 1 approval and 3 protests, or 2 protests. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Beal. Would the applicant like to be heard?
Yes, this is Chuck Martin at Rick Engineering. I have with me Peter Aronoff, the applicant, and Evan Eglin, the architect, and also online we have Marcos Esparza, the traffic engineer. I think John did a great job describing the project. We do agree that it's appropriate and compatible with this property. I've got a PowerPoint presentation if I can share the screen. So the property is in the northwest corner of Campbell and Allen. It's mostly vacant. There's an office building on the south parcel that's underutilized right now. It's adjacent to bus routes on Campbell and close to the routes on Roger and Prince. Bike route on Mountain is fairly close to the site. Oops, sorry. As John described, the setback from the west exceeds the code requirements and also the setbacks from the north. This single family residence is on the west and a mobile home park on the north. The south is 2-story apartments. It's the east is Banner Hospital. The access to the site is as far north as we could put it, away from Allen Road to keep the traffic access, well, have it accessible. There's no access onto Allen Road. That was part of the discussions with the neighbors. We'll meet the landscape and buffering requirements of the code and also the drainage, retention and detention requirements. The buildings will be limited to 28 feet, and we have preliminary sketch that be variable heights to the facade as part of the requirements of the campus farms neighborhood plan. The owners agreed to no balconies on the west side of the site, west units facing the neighbors, and to a sill height for the windows at minimum 5 feet. This came out of the substantial outreach process, in the last year. This was provided in the site analysis, but this was the outreach and revisions that were completed before the neighborhood meeting. Since that time, neighborhood meeting was on April 5th, 2023. Met with the ward office on May 10th, discussed the project. At a meeting with Bonnie Polis on May 22nd, and also a meeting misspelled with Rito Bend Neighborhood Association on August 5th. And we received a letter from support from Bonnie Polis on August 22nd. I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have about the site.
Mr. Martin, thank you very much for your presentation. I don't have any questions at this time, but I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Would anyone else in the audience like to be heard on this case?
Sorry, you saying it?
No.
Mr. Martin, I did see in the protest, there was a concern raised about views, impact, and also about traffic. I don't think it was a elaborate discussion of the traffic impact, but if you could address those, that would be helpful to me.
Traffic impact analysis or statement determined that there'd be very minimal increase of traffic on Campbell, and it's not much of an increase from the office use if the office was 100% occupied from the property. Since we don't have any access to Allen, there's a potential for some right turn movements onto Allen, but we believe that's going to be pretty minor. One of the conditions and the applicants agreed to is traffic calming devices along Allen, if that can be worked out with the neighbors in the city. So we feel that the project's not going to increase the number of trips on Allen significantly. And then there's the mitigation that is required by the conditions and agreed to by the applicant. As far as the views, the parcels in question are about 275 feet south of the site. I tried to, this dimension, I think is about where the corner of the furthest west building would be. It appears that there's vegetation along their property line and along Allen, and we will be required to add additional trees along Allen. So I think vegetation mitigates the view of the new structures, and I don't believe that they're going to impact their views significantly.
Thank you, Mr. Martin. I'm going to go ahead. Did I hear someone?
No, it's Peter Aronoff. I was
Yes.
also going to mention that parcel is zoned O3 at this current time, and the tallest structure we'll have is going to be below the current zoning's maximum building height.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Aronoff. I noted that as well, but I appreciate it. I'm going to close the public hearing on case TPENT 0523000023. Thank you all for your participation. The next case
Thank
we
you.
have tonight is
Here.
case TPENT 0623000028 North Oracle Road Special Exception. Mr. Slater, are you presenting the staff report or Mr. Beal?
Yep, I'll be presenting. Thank you.
Please go ahead, sir.
All right, so the issue at hand is a special exception request for a dispensary on approximately Oracle and Roger Road. It's an allowed use in the zone, which is C2. But a new dispensary requires a mayor and council special exception in compliance with use specific
Hello?
standards.
Yeah.
Use specific standards outlined in the UDC. This dispensary is proposed to be 10,000 square feet. In phase one, there are illustrations on a site plan showing a future phase with a drive-through lane, I think similar to the one that they have. It's kind of like Kolb and 22nd or Kolb and Golf Links. There's a comparable project. It uses on-site parking. Let me see. They made some modifications to their preliminary development plan based on some feedback from staff in their pre-submittal meeting in terms of adding additional landscaping, screening, and some privacy mitigation features from the apartment building immediately to the east. Let's see, and their development plan shows meeting all the use specific standards in terms of like security and hours of operation, outdoor seating areas, noise and odor mitigation. Doesn't oh, excuse me. Okay, so since it's consistent with Plan Tucson, the area plan, and compliant with the performance criteria for a marijuana dispensary, staff recommends approval of the special exception land use in the C2 zone. We find the proposal is appropriate. There were a handful of comments. I think by 5 p.m. yesterday, we received a total of 2 approvals and 4 protests. I think we got 1 additional comment through email today. Of those, 1 protest was outside of the 150-foot range, and 2 of the protests were within 150 feet. Neither of them being over 20% of the area by lots or total area. And I'll answer any questions you might have.
Thank you, Mr. Slater. I don't have any questions at the present time. Would the applicant like to be heard?
Good evening, Mr. Urino. This is Brian Underwood with the Planning Center. Thank you for being here and hearing our case this evening. I'm also joined by Garrett Aldrett here in the office with me. And then we have one of the owners of D2 Dispensaries, Mo Asnani. He is also on the call. And we have David Lee, who wishes to speak as well at some point this evening.
Thank you. Go right ahead.
All right, thank you. Let me go ahead and just start the slideshow here. All right. So just a little bit of context for everybody on joining us here this evening. The property is located at 3906 North Oracle Road. It's outlined there or highlighted there in yellow, and it currently is a vacant space in that commercial center. It's been vacant for actually about a decade. I believe it was 2013 when Joanne Fabric moved out of that space, and since then it's had some interim uses, some seasonal, Spirit Halloween stores and things of that nature that have come in over time. but nothing, no permanent occupation of that space for about 10 years now. So the idea with this proposal is to breathe some new life into the center, bring a, an anchor tenant back into the largest space on the site, and breathe some reinvestment into this existing center here. So as you can see, there's a multitude of commercial uses to the north, the south, even across the street on the west side. And then we have some multifamily apartments adjacent to us on the east, and then some single family housing to the southeast. So taking a look at the existing zoning, the property is zoned C2 currently, as are all of the properties to the north and the south, and those on the west side of the Oracle Road corridor there. And then we have the residential zoning associated with the apartments and the single family housing. And as mentioned in staff's report, in December of last year, the council adopted a new ordinance to effectively change what was a by right use for dispensaries in the C2 zone to require that special exception process that we're going through today, or that we're going through right now. And that was, to have a closer look at things like parking and traffic generation for dispensaries, and to give an opportunity for the neighborhood to provide input as well. So to formalize that review process a little bit more, add a little bit more time to the evaluation of dispensary applications. And that's really where we are today with asking for this special exception on the property. However, through that C2 zoning and that historic use of that use being allowed historically in the C2 zone, there is some precedent there and some appropriateness that we're building upon. So in addition to looking at things like parking and setbacks and height and the traffic generation from dispensaries, dispensaries are also required to comply with a number of use specific standards, and Mr. Slater touched on a number of those, and there's a few of them listed here on this slide, which we are in full compliance with all of them. The building will be limited. It's actually right now that anchor space is over the 10,000 square feet. So our intention is to partition that building down to 10,000 square feet to be in compliance with that use specific standard. Hours of operation, we would be limiting them to what the city allows for any other dispensary in the city. And then in terms of setbacks from other uses, certainly from other dispensaries, I believe the closest dispensary is about a mile away. And then, from those those uses that we want to protect, like K through 12 schools, public, private, charter schools, childcare facilities, libraries, certain parks and whatnot. All of those things, this site has an ample distance from. I believe the closest school is about 2,000 feet away, northwest of the site along Roger Road there. So, and I should mention as well that we do have a full traffic report that was submitted as part of the application, and I'm happy to answer any questions regarding the traffic report itself. I know there's been in some of the public comments some discussion about the indirect access on Roger Road there. The direct access, the primary access to this site is from Oracle Road. It's what the center currently uses today. However, there is that indirect access on Roger Road that exists, and the anticipated traffic generation from Roger Road is somewhat minimal based on the traffic analysis that we performed and the amount of traffic that we see along Roger Road, especially in comparison to Oracle Road being that major 6-lane thoroughfare where we know that there are high traffic volumes. So just diving a bit into the layout, the proposed layout for the dispensary here, and in harmony with the existing center. You can see the dispensary spaces outlined here, the 10,000 square feet. And that would be, the intent would be, that would be an initial phase opening to just in-store customers, and getting the space improved, getting open for business, and then going through that permitting process as part of phase 2 to allow for the enclosed drive-through. And I should mention that everything that is proposed for the dispensary is in full compliance, not only with City of Tucson standards and guidelines, but also state regulations. So there would be a full security plan that would be submitted to the state of Arizona, and that security plan would include everything from surveillance cameras covering everything on the exterior of the dispensary to all interior spaces, 24-hour independently monitored security alarm system, and so on there in terms of what state requirements there are. There will also be security, on-site security, both an armed guard and a regular security guard that is employed by D2 dispensaries. So they would have a third-party armed guard and also their own private security guard that they employ themselves. So the security would patrol during business hours, and then the security lighting, security cameras, and all of the alarm systems would be in place during those non-business hours. And really, the goal is, and in response to some of the concerns about crime in the area and what's occurring today, and the concern about perhaps an uptick in that if this use were to come in, what we're trying to do is to activate this space, to get rid of that large vacant acre space that has no activity going on around it, particularly on the backside of that building, and leads to unwanted activity. So additionally, as part of these improvements to the building itself, and albeit most of those internal, with the exception of the cut in the building to accommodate the drive-through, we are proposing some improvements along the eastern boundary as well. And those are to soften that transition between the existing center and the proposed use, and having a drive-through that cues cars in from the backside of the building, to soften all of that from the adjacent La Cima apartments to the east there. And so currently there exists no buffer really. There's just a 4-foot wooden fence. And so our proposal would be to add a 5-foot masonry wall there, and also a 10-foot landscape border with canopy trees, ideally placed, where we're putting them in front of where they would align with porches and balconies for the adjacent apartments there, so that we can maximize the screening effect for that second story as well, since that new wall should help block some things for folks on the ground floor there. And one of the other things that we're depicting here on the site plan is, you can see these purple hatches over some of the existing parking spaces in the center. And the reason for that is that there is a surplus of parking in the center. However, we want to ensure that there would be dedicated parking for each of the other tenants. So signage in place saying, no dispensary parking for, such and such tenant, instead there. And so I believe we have, with the changes that we're proposing along the eastern boundary, because that will modify some of the parking along that side. I believe we still have a surplus of north of 30 spaces, extra spaces on the site here. And we held our neighborhood meeting back in May. We had, as the staff report mentions, we had 4 applicants who were in attendance. We had some discussion around, you know, what that transition, what that buffer looks like between the apartments and this site here. And then some follow-up communication with actually the property owner here of the center, just to ensure that if in the event that this dispensary were to ever move to another location, that the parking could be put back and, you know, basically the center put back as it is today, to ensure that there is continued or to ensure that there is the same amount of parking as was originally conceived when this one was built, I believe, with some sort of agreement or connection to the property to the north that sits at the hard corner of Roger and Oracle. So definitely wanted to consider that as part of this process, because all of these 3 commercial centers, actually, the one north of us, this one, and the one to the south, do have direct pedestrian connections between them. And then in the case of this one and the center to the south, there is that connection along the backside off of Roger Road there. And with that, I will open it up to any questions that you may have after. Actually, I'm jumping the gun a little bit. Mo, did you want to go ahead and speak to some of your work with Coalition Against Retail Theft and your operation of your other 2 dispensaries in Tucson? And then we also had David Lee, who I believe wanted to say a few words.
Yeah, thank you, Brian. We have David Lee, we have Charlotte Machado, and also Dave Hammock on. But part of what you know, I looked at the comments, and I could not be more sympathetic to the folks who are worried about the open air drug use that's happening all over the city. And we've seen it firsthand. We have 2 locations. We have one in downtown where we are on a city sidewalk, and then we're also on 22nd and Kolb in a private plaza. The amount of enforcement we're able to do when we're in a private plaza, very similar to this, is significant, because private security can ask people not to violate the trespassing laws, move them off the area. And also when there's an activated space, as opposed to a vacant space that's boarded up or not doing anything, it becomes a magnet for folks who are unsheltered. And you know, as chair of Coalition Against Retail Theft, I run monthly meetings where we have, the last one we had Homeland Security, the AG's office, as well as the local police departments. So I live this, I feel it with you. Every day we are in the city and seeing, you know, the crime rates go through the roof because of whatever may be going on that is more political. But the idea that a cannabis dispensary is going to increase crime is a notion I would really like to dispel, because regardless of what the business is, how many can you find who will come in with high-tech security, with armed security, you know, patrolling the area? And we have a very active interest in keeping the space safe, because we have inventory there that is valuable. We're not allowed to take credit cards, so we also have a decent amount of cash. And that means that our security parameters have to be above and beyond what any other store that's taking, you know, digital payments or credit cards may be able to do. So just from the prism of how we're looking at the business, and of course, you know, people may think I have a bias here, but I want to be hyper clear that this is something where we care about our security, the safety of our employees and our customers, above and beyond all else. And for that reason, us being in this plaza would mean that it is actually a greater level of safety than it was before. And then, yeah, I'd like to leave it with that. And anybody else?
Before we go to anyone else, just for the record, that was Mo Asnani who spoke. Go right ahead, Mr. Underwood. Anyone else on your ticket?
David, did you want to say a few words? Looks like you're muted still there.
You're muted, David.
So I was saying I try to keep as low key as possible, and that, I guess that means I have to unmute myself. So, I mean, I've been doing commercial real estate for over 40 years, and we've represented or owned over 1 million square feet of property. The closest property we own to this property is on the corner of Oracle and Prince. We've had ourselves subjected to a lot of transient issues, and it's been in the news that that's kind of like the epicenter of the transient activities and the drug trafficking. In our discussions with the city of Tucson police, they basically said, you know, it's a policy level. It's a society issue. We can only do so much. We engaged with private security, and, you know, essentially it has solved the problem. It has not found homes or happy careers or happiness for all the other people that were gathering there, but at least it's not a problem for our tenants. So the security does make it an effective solution for the property. We manage the shopping center where the D2 dispensary is currently at 22nd and Cole. We had lots of concerns before the tenant moved in with its new type of use that was new for the state. They've been there like 4 or 5 years now. We went to the major anchor tenants. We went to the small anchor tenants. We went to the neighbors. We all said, hey, what do you think? And they were all like, you know, normally we would be concerned, but it is kind of the times, and we think it should be good as long as it's a good operator. We'll go with that. And in the 5 years that they've been there, I can say that we have not had any issues, which is really contrary to the other shopping centers we've had. So, you know, to D2's credit, they have picked up our security load and has patrolled the whole shopping center for us. Since they've been there, our other major anchor tenants, which is Choose Fitness and Goodwill Industries, they've both renewed their leases. They've both done renovations and expansions. So, you know, I can say that they're all happy with that. And I just want to say that they've been a good neighbor. They've been a good tenant. And I do think that it's a solution for a space that's been vacant for a decade.
Thank you. For the record, that was David Lee. Mr. Underwood, anything else for me?
Nothing further. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Underwood. We had a request to speak from Ed and Zlane Machado. I hope I pronounced that passably well. And then we'll ask to hear from them, and then I'll open it up to others in the audience who might like to be heard. Ed or Zlane, please go ahead.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Thank you, sir. Start with your name, sir, and then go right ahead.
Yeah. My name is Ed Machado. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Thank you. Please go ahead.
Yeah, my wife Elaine and I, we own the Oracle Village Shopping Center, the property immediately to the north of the proposed dispensary site. And we have no affiliation with the dispensary site to the south. We believe that this property for the dispensary should not be granted a special exception for the dispensary, and it should be denied until a better traffic analysis is made. We have done a thorough review of the report done by the Planning Center concerning the dispensary and the traffic impact analysis done by Esparza Engineering. I've been the owner of Oracle Village for over 30 years, and I was a partial owner of the dispensary property for 20. During that time, I have become well versed in the traffic patterns and what happens concerning the two centers. I believe the Planning Center report and the TIA have both failed to accurately foresee what is going to happen once the dispensary is in place. The plan states that there are 2 driveways on Oracle Road that can be used to access the property. The only way to use those driveways off of Oracle is to make a right turn in and out. There is no dedicated left turn lane off of Oracle to get onto the dispensary property. Therefore, with my 3 decades of knowledge about the property and understanding normal human nature to find the easiest way in, I believe that the majority of the traffic to the dispensary will use the entry off Roger Road on our property to access the dispensary, not the two driveways on Oracle. The dispensary property does not border Roger Road at all, and the only way to access the dispensary from Roger Road is through our property. The only easy way to access the two driveways for the dispensary on Oracle is if you are traveling northbound on Oracle. Anyone traveling southbound on Oracle will want to avoid having to make a U-turn and instead will enter on Roger Road. All east and westbound traffic on Roger Road and those exiting the Target Center will enter on Roger Road and travel through our property. This will most likely result in a majority of the dispensary traffic traveling across our property. Our entry off of Roger Road is there to allow entry to the customer parking at our center and to the employee parking by our center. It is not a road or thoroughfare. The TIA report estimates that there will be over 2,000 weekday trips, and it does not even address weekend trips at all. Based on these figures, there's going to be hundreds of extra cars going through our property each day. If the drive-through and delivery are put into place, this number could increase substantially. Hundreds of additional cars entering and exiting on Roger Road through our property will have a huge negative effect concerning congestion, liability, safety, wear and tear. In conclusion then, our main concern is the increase of hundreds of daily cars that will use the Roger Road entry on our property to access and leave the dispensary and the huge negative impact it will have on our property. We ask that you do not grant the request until maybe a better travel study is done concerning what's going to happen to our property once the dispensary is in place. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Machado. Would anyone else in the audience like to be heard on this case? Hearing no one, Mr. Underwood, would you like to address Mr. Machado's point about a further traffic study being needed?
Yes, Mr. Urino, thank you. I believe we would be open to doing a further analysis as we move through the process. We'd even be willing to have that conditioned as part of the rezoning. I think for us, we've evaluated the access points based off of where we know primary access and where most of the traffic is expected to come from. But certainly we hear Mr. Machado's concerns and are willing to adjust that traffic study and to do some further analysis as we move through the process.
Thank you. All right, I want to thank everyone for their participation. I'm going to close the hearing on case TPENT 0623000028, and I hope everyone has a safe and lovely evening. Good night. Thank you.
Thank you. You too.
Thank you.